Friends, how many times we have felt that we have too many obstacles to conquer, too many obstacles to overcome, and there is one important characteristic which is called hope, which helps us to move on. Welcome to U Talks. Today we are going to talk about episode number 17, how to perform under pressure, optimism and tenacity. So, friends, in the last episode 16, we talked about optimism. So, there's a little bit of recap I want to do. Optimism is all about what happens on either side of moment, which is in future and in past. For the future, we talked is about all our expectations. And for the past, we talked about it is all about explanations. How you can do an explanation of what happened in your past and how you can do an explanation of what is going to be expecting in your future for you. And we also talked about that as an individual, you always get information from outside in and you always give information from inside out. And both of these information go into your PFC, which is the prefrontal cortex, which determines how you're going to feel either optimistic or pessimistic. And as per the research we talked about, the inside out information always supersedes the outside in information. Now, today we are going to talk about few more important things on concluding to the optimism part. Instilling optimism in yourself is the key. How do you do that? There are different ways and means of doing it. Some people use optimism by thinking good about their family, about the future, whatever past events, if they are not good events happened, they do not associate it with any kind of self-blaming, but associate it with a very specific reason and move ahead. They also develop an optimistic vocabulary. Now you can have an optimistic vocabulary of using very, very positive words, using your password. I'm not going to tell you my password, but you can use some very optimistic passwords of your goals, which you can write each and every day, because we know that we are entering our passwords everywhere, every day for some or the other reason. So developing an optimistic vocabulary is a very important process which helps you to be more optimistic. Third thing is adopting the belief that that world is a fair place. The moment you start blaming the world or the people too much, then you start going into a negative spiral of that the world is pessimistic. So therefore, adopting a belief that world is fair and you are treated fairly is very important to keep a habit of being optimistic. Other thing around the same thing is appreciate the world around you. That the world around you has to be appreciated so that you feel more optimistic. And finally, explaining your life optimistically is very important. What is happening in nowadays in the COVID times and even the normal times is when people come to you and say, hey, how is your business going on? We all know that probably things are not hunky-dory and rosy as it was probably last year. However, if you start explaining the life in a very pessimistic way, you are missing a chance to be optimistic. And that's how explaining your life optimistically is very important. So that was a recap of the optimism. Let's move on to tenacity. Tenacity is an important characteristic, which is the one of the third element of the coat armor. We talked about confidence, we talked about optimism. Tenacity is the third, and in the next episode we'll talk about enthusiasm. Tenacity is the ability to hang on. Now, how do you get that ability? And what is that ability? We all know tenacity is an English word, that it is the ability to hang on into a certain situation. But how do you get that ability? There are certain situations, certain characteristics of it. First of all, let's take an example. You work in a company, let's say you're a student, you have to start believing, or even let's say community. People say that I am going into depression because people hate me or people do not like me. In a community, people say that in corporates, they're being sidelined and they feel that they're not able to feel resilient. So one important thing they have to do is you have to believe that you belong to a particular place. That's a very important belief you have to instill in yourself, whether it's a school, community, or a corporate. Second is whatever you are doing in your community, in your corporate, in your school, or wherever you belong to, you have to be highly engaged in what you are doing. And the process of engagement means you can forego a lot of pleasures and you sustain and you put yourself to hard work to accomplish your goals. So engagement is very important. Third is seeking setbacks as an opportunity to learn. We all know that we are not perfect. Everything happens around us. We also try to do and achieve few things, but everything doesn't go in the same way as it should. And there are a lot of setbacks we all face. So we have to use those setbacks as an opportunity to learn. And the most important thing, which sometimes people do not do, they may feel they belong to a place, they may be very engaged, they may be using even failures as an opportunity to learn. But the fourth important thing is deploying new strategies to move forward is very, very important. And this is an important characteristic of being tenacious. So tenacity is very, very important in a way that you have to keep deploying new strategies to move forward. I can take some examples. For example, if I'm working in automotive sector or a high-tech sector or a healthcare sector, things are not moving. I have to keep deploying on new strategies to move forward. It could be one of the characteristics which is probably used by entrepreneurs, but that's why we say sometimes entrepreneurs are highly tenacious because they keep on deploying new strategies to move forward, and that can apply to corporates, communities, and schools, or wherever you are. The next important point is that tenacity has an important DNA, which means the DNA is composed of four important elements. One is G, second is F, third is H, and finally C, which means goals, focus, hope, and coping. And all these four chromosomes have to be intact so that your string of tenacity is not broken. Let's see what these four chromosomes of tenacity mean to us. Let's take number one. First is G, the goals. What are goals? Goals are nothing but your survival instincts. For example, when you are in a good situation, you have no problem to survive, people become goalless. And survival instincts are hardwired into our brain from our ancestors' time. Therefore, having goals are very important when you start putting something at your survival. If you believe, for example, that if you don't get this program or project or a deal, if you believe you cannot pass a SAT test, if you believe you cannot accomplish this examination, then your survival is at stake. So thinking that your survival is at a stake drives you to create goals. And you know what goals do? Goals drive a purposeful action, and which is very important. Once you are engaged in purposeful action, you start exerting yourself voluntarily. So voluntary exertion is very important. That's why goal setting in corporates is such an important exercise. Why we tell our sales leaders or corporate leaders or employees to set their own goals, because goals derive the purposeful action, and then employees subject themselves to voluntary exertion. Second is focus. What is focus? The moment you have goals narrow your attention. The moment you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals, it narrows down your attention. And focus is nothing but a path-finding mechanism. Once your goals are defined, you will have a narrow attention and your ability to focus increases substantially. Third is hope. We started this episode with the line on hope, that we all overcome obstacles, and sometimes obstacles are too many to conquer, but only one thing which helps us to survive is hope. Hope is nothing but the desire to attach ourselves to a positive outcome. Very important. And I would not like to be philosophical in this episode, but yes, hope is something which binds us to a positive outcome, which gives us a positive feeling. Even in times of despair and toughness, we can look forward. Now, there are two important components of hope. One is agency, the willpower, and second is the pathway thinking. Probably we'll find another time to go in deep, but you can imagine the willpower and the ability or a desire to find a path for the survival is hope, which leads you to a thinking of positive outcomes. And finally, while we talked about the 3 DNAs of the 3 chromosomes of the hope, for tenacity, goals, focus, and hope, The fourth important thing is coping, is very important. You might have goals, you might have a high focus, you might also have hope, but sometimes times are tough and you may start feeling stress, you may start feeling anxiety. How do you do that? So you have to develop those coping mechanism. It's a circular process. We come back to our those 22 pressure management techniques. We come back to our confidence and optimism, which allows you to get away from stress, get away from anxiety, do a balancing mechanism of your physical, mental, and soulful life, and cope those situations. And coping is also directly related to important thing is that you have to start reframing obstacles into opportunities. So that is an important factor which allows you to start coping with different kind of situations. So summarizing, we talked about tenacity today. To be tenacious, you have to have this GFHC. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. In the next episode, we are going to talk about the final coating of armor, how to manage pressure, how to perform under pressure is the enthusiasm. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or any comments, leave it in the comment box. If you're reading it on or watching it on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, I would be very happy to include all your comments into my next talk. Thank you very much and have a good day.